Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about intentional and relationship-based leadership. After all, business is pretty transactional, but relationships are reciprocal. So the question I want you to think about as I record this episode is, how can your business environment be elevated through following some of the best practices that we're going to talk about in building good relationships? My guest today is Arno Koch. He is the father of a 3.5-year-old son and an 11-month-old daughter, a husband to a wonderful wife and his best friend, and the dog dad of a goofy Rhodesian Ridgeback, and lives in Malibu, California. Following an international corporate career as an engineer in Germany and a product manager in Switzerland and in corporate development in California, Arno became a professional business coach in 2018. Coincidentally, his first business clients were struggling in their relationships, which began to thrive again over the course of Arno's coaching programs, with the added benefit of helping clients overcome bulimia, phobias, and PTSD. Recognizing this pattern and considering his own transformation, Arno began to focus on elevating and healing relationships and has remained passionate about it ever since. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Arno to the show and talk about other things that we don't normally cover, which is relationships. Arno, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you having me on. And I loved our conversation so far, and I'm excited to build on that.
Yeah. So, there are a few things in my book, Disruptive Successor, where I talk about some basic communication techniques and things. And I'm going to start off with one of them that I cover is John Gottman's 4 Horsemen, which was 4 things he wrote about in Harvard Business Review. And some of these are really damaging communication styles. And so I'm going to start off with that just as a point. And then we're going to just kind of go from there. But these are like holding contempt for someone else in the workplace or criticizing. And so where I think this really shows up is if your culture and your company is filled with a lot of blaming and shaming, then your people are going to feel fairly insecure as employees in your company. And I'm sure that you've seen this. Now, I think, let me see if I can remember the other behaviors. Another one is stonewalling. So, and I guess we could describe what each of these are. I'll let you do it if you want, but some of them are fairly obvious. And these are pretty destructive behaviors. Obvious behaviors are rolling your eyes in a business meeting, body language where you turn away from someone or your arms are folded, your knees are, like looking like that. Exactly. I mean, like, isn't this just some of them? Like, you and I might think this is pretty obvious, but like a lot of people don't see it. Has that been your experience working with people?
Yeah, and those are trained behaviors, right? That comes from childhood, that comes from past companies. People have worked in how people have been assimilated in past company cultures and behaviors they've been exposed from by partners or by close coworkers, right? And one thing I like to say is hurt people, and that in itself can take a lot of pressure from the experience of someone doing hurtful things, like those four horsemen, like criticizing in moments where you're like, that is not appropriate right now, right? We're just seeing things differently, and there are several right ways to look at something. We're talking philosophies here, not right or wrong. Or becoming defensive, taking things personal, right? And thinking I have to make up for that. Someone's attacking me, blaming people for things, right? And being contemptuous, thinking, oh, I'm just better than that person, and making them feel it. And if the leadership or part of the leadership team exercise those behaviors, that trickles down, because if you want it or not, the leaders shape the culture of the company and have a bigger effect than some might acknowledge.
Yeah, I think these behaviors are particularly problematic because they're what I would describe as winning behaviors learned from a parent who won with those behaviors. And so you think that they're right, but you don't pause to recognize that there might be a lack of emotional intelligence in those behaviors, a lack of, let's just call it, awareness of how other people are responding when you're doing that. And so if you're in a company culture where there's a lot of blaming, shaming, criticism, defensiveness, contemptuousness, the rolling of the eyes, the looking away, I won't I won't work with that kind of person. I mean, these are problematic behaviors. When people take things too personally in business, it's problematic. And so I think the flip side of that, you were introducing me to a book by Gary Chapman called The 5 Languages of Appreciation. I mean, the flip side of blaming and shaming is to appreciate people. And I mean, we know that most people know that a best practice is to praise publicly and to, criticize privately. But let's talk about these 5 languages of appreciation. And because he wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages, which I highly recommend to people to read. It's based on a lot of interesting research. But appreciating people is the flip side of these other behaviors. And I think that it's a cornerstone of good relationship work, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can't overdo appreciation and gratitude, right? I just talked with someone the other day, a married man, married for 17 years. And he was like, but if I do that all the time, and it's not reciprocated, am I becoming the bitch in my relationship? Excuse my language.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, you can't overdo appreciation and gratitude. If you overdo appreciation and gratitude, or if you do it a lot and you don't set boundaries, you don't show up for yourself, you're not acting respectfully in a way that you need to be respected, and people can get away with that with overstepping the boundary, then you're being the bitch again in the relationship, so to speak, but not because you're showing appreciation and gratitude. And the 5 love languages are a great model for showing appreciation and a good way to understanding that concept better and getting into it. Right?
So like, how do we teach this in business? It seems so, on one hand, it seems so basic and fundamental. On the other hand, it seems like, well, it's not talking about like what we're doing in business here. I mean, it's very soft probably for a lot of businesses to talk about this stuff. I mean, how do you introduce these concepts and why they're important?
Yeah, it takes a little bit of a transmutation to go from one to the other. Of course, you can't give a lot of gifts to your employees or bosses. You can't spend quality time with them and go for a walk, right? and you need to be subtle with words of appreciation, especially towards the leadership team, because if your coworkers see that, they might start talking bad about you and not appreciate it, or acts of service for certain people. And then especially touch is especially difficult. How am I going to touch anyone in the workplace?
Wow. No.
So it takes a little bit to understand what that looks like. So, for example, what's quality time? Quality time can be a one-on-one meeting with an employee who wants to share what they're doing, who's open for that, for whom that is meaningful, right? And that means a lot to that person. That person will feel absolutely appreciated, and that is then not the time to criticize that person, but really to exchange where one is at, give some even some mentorship that you can provide to that person in that setting. Gifts can be bringing donuts in one morning a month, one morning a week, or Starbucks coffees. Bring Starbucks coffees for,
or even like setting up a bonus program, or I would imagine that be part of gifts as well.
A bonus program is also a little bit transactional, right? Has a transactional component to it. It's more like just giving something just as a token of appreciation, not having to do anything for it. Words of appreciation, especially in meetings, especially in public, is powerful. Praising them, talking about the good things they did. And it's one thing I learned. Alison Armstrong has this audiobook, Celebrating Partnership, which I can really, really recommend. And she says at some point, men play for points, right? That's why they play video games and then scoot their Mario Kart a little bit to the right to collect a star. Completely useless, but they do it anyway. Men play for points. So in every word of appreciation is a little point that they score. So, and when they see that what they do is recognized and they're being seen and heard and praised in front of other people, that motivates to do more of that, right? There's often a perception of, if I give them too much praise, they will sit back and just rest on their laurels. But the truth is, people love to just collect laurels. People love to stuff their drawers with laurels, and that's the truth of it. Are there people who rest on laurels or who appear like that? Maybe there are some, but those people probably need a conversation, or they have a different love language. So let's talk about.
Interesting. These are really interesting. I mean, I had never thought of the 5 love languages and how they track over to the business. I've only looked at them in the context of personal relationships, but this is making a lot of sense to me. Again, we're talking about the 5 love languages, and the author is Gary Chapman, who based a lot of his writing on research. I think he was a therapist, maybe, or psychologist, and just like after years and years of experience, he started realizing that there was a disconnect between the couples and the people that were coming to see him. But this is making really good sense. So carry on.
Yeah. Acts of service is another thing. Employees like the hand-holding of the leadership team. And of course, we want them to be running in no time, right? And it can be annoying to have to explain something to someone like 4 times, and we start questioning their sanity because they have to hear it again. But it's part of a learning process to have to hear things multiple times before we can actually put it into action. So doing things for someone else, like helping them write an email, can lead a long way. And as they try to write that email, they send it to the boss. He makes some changes, sends it back. So they've put some thought into it. Now they see the correction. Now they see how he likes that email to be sent. That's an act of service where he helps that person grow and become better. And then there is touch. And in the business environment, there are people who do like high fives and fist bumps.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes some sensory acuity to see who really enjoys those things. And then offering those things. And if someone is reluctant, why does he want a fist bump now? That's weird. Then you don't. but
Right.
Those who appreciate it, why not? And it does say it takes some sensory acuity, and especially the touch topic, it's advised to err on the side of caution for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think our society has become quite I don't know. Maybe the term is woke, where it's not okay to do that. But I can get away from the politics of that and just talk a little bit about, I have an interesting question I'm just kind of formulating, which is, if you could create a curriculum that would be useful and beneficial to a lot of companies and would be off the mark from what they normally are used to in terms of management training, business coach training, like what would be in that curriculum?
The five languages of appreciation, absolutely. And just to round it up, I just remembered I had one boss at some point. He used to give people coffee in the meetings. He would be the one going to the coffee machine and giving everybody coffee. Act of service. Right. Other people called for the secretary to bring in the coffee, and he went through the coffee machine in the room and gave everybody a coffee. That's a beautiful way to show some appreciation. And nobody looked down on that and felt he was a servant now. So back to the curriculum. Five languages of appreciation is one. Personality types can be a big one. Yeah. And the concept, there are different concepts of personality types. There's the DISC system, there's the Myers-Briggs. The one that I use uses animals, because it makes it very easy to see someone through that lens and to assign a certain animal to that person, as the shark, the dolphin, the whale, and the owl. Mm-hmm. And once you learn the system, it's very easy to categorize people, and it really helps to understand them better. Like, for example, you have those people who share a lot of information, and those people that get bored when they hear a lot of information. Right. So as someone who doesn't enjoy hearing so much information and wants people to get more to the point, recognizing that it is important for that person to share, to feel understood. And on the other hand, all of those relationship tips all go full circle, right? So one is understanding them better, letting them finish, letting them say everything. The other thing is sharing more. That person needs more information, although it might feel tedious to the person giving the information. That person needs more. And when that person gets all the information, they will be a lot more engaged, involved, and reciprocate. So personality types would definitely be part of that curriculum. And then also self-mastery. Effective communication with self. And to me, that means mastering our state of being. And our state of being is comprised of 4 substates: the physical state, the mental state, the emotional state, and the spiritual state. Mm-hmm. And each one of those substates, whenever one of those substates changes, there's a ripple effect to the other substates and over our overall state. So it's interesting to look at in the context of relationships. How does that work? And it's the same in the work environment. For example, you feel sadness. Someone feels sadness. Okay. As they feel sad, now they rearrange their body in space. Start breathing shallow. Shoulders move forward. Chin goes down. Now a camera would capture this as a sad person. As that happens, now that trickles down into the mental state, the focus and the thoughts. So a self-talk might start that goes like, okay, why is he doing that? That really makes me sad. I've told him I don't like it, but he's doing it. Why is he doing it? Actually, I can remember I told him that I don't like it, and now he's still doing it. So he has followed through with it. So he must be conscious that I don't like it. So that must mean that he's doing it on purpose. Why is he doing it on purpose? How do I deserve that he does that to me on purpose for the nth time? And now the sadness gets bigger, or there's even anger mixed into that sadness now. And that changes then the spiritual state, the energy and the beliefs we have in a certain situation. Do you actually hear my baby crying in the background?
No, I don't.
She's with the nanny, and she becomes more and more vocal.
Mm-hmm.
So the spiritual state, that means the energy goes down, lower vibration, right? And you can sense, I mean, some people believe in energy, some people don't believe in energy, but I think everybody believes that they sense that something is off when they come into a room and there's a sad person sitting there.
Yes.
We kind of sense that. That's what I call energy. But also beliefs, and religious beliefs are part of that, but they're also local beliefs, like, okay, now I can't speak with that person for the next 3 hours because whatever, or now we're going to have a fight in a relationship for the next 3 hours. Or global beliefs like, maybe this relationship is not meant to be. Maybe I should consider breaking up. Or in a business environment, maybe I should fire that person. He's doing that all the time. And that's how those four states really, really interact and are intertwined. And now there are certain things we can do to alter each one of those four states. And a very simple idea is just putting the shoulders back, taking a deep breath, chin up, and giving our unconscious mind a sense of, I'm confident and I'm okay, and I can metabolize my stress hormones now. And I will approach the rest of the conversation in a much more empowered way than as I'm sitting there hunched over and not exposing my body to the amount of oxygen that it needs. Same for the emotional state, the mental state, changing that self-talk. And an easy way to do that is reframing. And there's a context and a meaning reframe. So I can say, is there a context where I could appreciate the behavior of that other person? For example, if my wife gets a bit intense when we have a conversation, I might not like that, right? I might feel attacked unconsciously. And then I reframe that and say, okay, if she was out there with our son and had to defend our son, I would want her to show up in exactly that way. And I know that she would, and I know that she can really show up and stand up for herself. I can appreciate that, but I know that how you do some things, how you do everything. So I need to be able to acknowledge her doing that when she's conversing with me as well. Or giving it a meaning reframe, she's raising her voice. Does that mean she's disrespecting me? Have I ever raised my voice towards someone who I deeply respect? I have to confess, I've done that. So maybe it means something else. Maybe she doesn't feel heard right now. So now I can think of, how can I make her feel heard? Do that and see if that has an effect. So and then spiritually, probably more before or after the meeting, preparing, maybe meditating, maybe just for 15 minutes, breathing deep, doing some breath work can make a big difference. So there are ways to change those four substates in a very powerful way that I believe any person in a relationship and any person in a business environment, especially difficult ones, needs to master.
Yeah.
And it's a big game changer.
I think you're right. As I think about it, DISC, Myers-Briggs. I've been using DISC probably for 20 years. There's lots of other behavioral assessment type instruments that also involve emotional intelligence and workplace motivators. And I've done some work inside of my clients with those. And I find that some people take to it, some people don't. Some people just find it really interesting. And those might be the people who have a little bit less of a sense of who they are and who other people are. And so it gives them a really good framework by which to look at people. So I have no idea how much market share, if all like business, like larger companies, these types of behavioral assessments have, have 20% of companies done this, have 5%. I have no idea. But I mean, obviously these have been around for a long time. And when I think about the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state, I think we're now talking about a much narrower subset of businesses that have gotten involved with this kind of work. And I think of the big thought leader in that area to me is Tony Robbins. I think that, there's nobody that addresses your state more than anyone. And if that's his one most notable impact, is getting people to change their state and working through that. I just wonder, and I don't know if you ever run into Tony Schwartz with the Energy Project, but his was also, I think, related to that type of state management, bringing your best energy. And how do you do, best energy? And, that comes from sleeping right or enough and eating well and measuring these things. But it's kind of a funny thing, right? That it's kind of funny to think that companies are expected to pay for the health insurance of their employees. And yet, does your boss ever ask you when you come to work, hey, how are you sleeping these days? Hey, let's talk about your nutrition so we can get your energy level going. Let's talk about, because it'll really help you with that goal setting in the morning. Like you're reviewing your goals that we set from our last one-on-one or from the last quarterly offsite. And I want to talk about how you're doing it, but really I want to talk about your energy, what your priorities are, but where's your, are you bringing your best energy to it? Are you bringing your best self? That would be so weird for an employer to talk to someone about that. It almost gets into like very personal stuff, how is this going to change, Arno? How are people going to open up how are we going to infiltrate the business world and help them to recognize that these things really matter? And that, it's not just like it's communication, it's language, it's body language, it's how you show up, but it's also how do you bring your best self? Which is your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state.
Yeah, the question is, how do you influence that corporate environment, right?
Yeah.
How do I, as a leader, influence the corporate environment? What are specific things that I can do?
Yeah.
And one thing on the physical side of things that comes to mind is the meeting cookies that you find, right?
What's that? You mean the cookies that you bring actually to the meetings?
Yeah, or cookies that are served at a meeting, right? Lots of wheat, sugar, unhealthy stuff. Just switching those for fruits and nuts, right?
Yeah.
Having a bowl of fresh apples at all time at the disposal of the employees.
Yeah.
What kind of an investment is that? Negligible.
Yeah.
But it's something that not only makes a difference for the people that consume it, but it also changes the environment. In an environment where you have those fruits in abundance, and it shifts the focus and the energy. I
think that was one of the things that places like WeWork did a really good job with. To me, when WeWork came along and announced that they were going to put these like executive suites for technology or freelance workers, I thought, okay, like it's been done, but they did it differently, right? They brought better coffee, they brought better snacks, they brought fresher fruit. They, you probably could get oat milk out of the dispenser and stuff. And I've seen some vending machines at places where, it's just like really healthy snacks. It's great. I don't think that most people connect the dots here, that they think, bringing donuts to work, like that's a great gift, but like you're really making people pretty fat probably by doing that. I can eat a donut when I ride my bike for 40 miles. It doesn't bother me at all. Or when I've been burning a ton of calories, but if I ate donuts every day, I'd be 100 pounds heavier than I am right now.
Yeah. Another thing can be having a library with inspirational books that people can borrow and take home. And heck, if someone steals a book for $14, right?
Yep.
Just replenish that book, put that book back in, and be excited. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So
be liberal with it.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little about the work that you do with companies, and how do you position it first to get inside, like when you're doing corporate type training work? I mean, I know with one-on-one, it's all going to depend upon who you're talking to and what their issue is. But if you're really going into a company and working with a team, like how do you position it with, given that there's all these different issues that might be presenting themselves, right? And like everyone, I mean, different issues, meaning everyone's coming to it from a very different vantage point.
Yeah. Because you want to illustrate the benefit, right? The bottom line. In the end, it is transactional. In the end, you want to get a financial benefit out of work like that.
Yep.
So the lowest hanging fruit is lowering the attrition rate. If a high attrition rate is your problem, then doing this is a no-brainer.
Sure.
Stating one employee will probably make up for this kind of training already.
I would think engagement levels also of employees, like if they're not fully engaged, giving them something of value here that helps their, personal lives. I mean, really, if you think about entrepreneurial journeys are basically like adventures in personal development at the same time, aren't they?
Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with gifts again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we bring this coach in to get your communication straight, okay, so that you don't F up that much anymore. Who wants that? But we're bringing this guy in as a token of our appreciation, because we think you guys will really greatly benefit from that, not only here at work, but you will benefit from that also in your family life, in your communication with your partners and with your children. And we want to offer this for you, to you, only to those people who are open for it, right? Other people wouldn't take anything from it anyway.
Sure.
So this is an offer, and you can take it if you so choose to. Now people are excited for it, and you get 3 days off because you're going to be in that workshop for 3 days. People love that. A lot of people love that.
I'm sure.
Take it.
I'm sure, but I think employers might be reluctant to want to make that investment because they can't. It's such a soft cost; they can't associate the ROI with it.
Yeah, the ROI becomes. I think that lowering the attrition rate is where it really becomes hard numbers. Mm-hmm. When it comes to communicating more effectively, working more efficiently, getting projects done faster. That is softer, and that is where a leader, where a CEO, where an HR person aspires to influence the company culture in a positive way. So they can have the intention, I want to shape this company culture. I want to have an influence. That is why I'm going to bring in this person and have an influence. So they come more from a contributing side, or also from a significant angle from themselves, which still has a big impact on elevating the company culture. So it's good no matter the intention.
Right.
But the attrition is, I think, where it really becomes very obvious.
Yeah, I think it's important for leaders, entrepreneurs to see what the ROI is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little bit but attrition is obviously very measurable.
Yeah.
So is company culture probably measurable too, right? Yeah. In terms of like the engagement level, or using the Gallup Q12, I think it's called, which is like ways of measuring, is our culture better? Do people like working here? Would you or the employee net promoter score, are you a raving fan? Would you refer this company as a place to work? I mean, the higher that score is, using that 1 through 10 voting mechanism, the more you can show ROI, I think.
Yeah. And it's easy to measure that, because you just need to send your employees this one question.
Correct.
And ask them again three months later and see what results of that. Now, the coach coming in can't promise a different result 3 months later.
Right.
So it still requires the trust of the leadership team.
Yeah.
Another thing that came to mind, where it's measurable, is when you've placed new people on the same position and they all either left quickly or burned out. And if you have 2 or more people, it's not about the individuals anymore. There's a pattern and there's something about this position, and then bring someone in to work on the company culture and to identify what's going on in that position that makes it difficult, is also a pretty obvious scenario where something needs to change.
Yeah. Now, when we were having in our previous conversation, you shared with me something that I thought was very interesting. And I think you referred to it as the 4 different adult attachment styles. And they were anxious, like preoccupied, avoidant, dismissive, disorganized, which is fearful, avoidant, and unresolved, and secure and autonomous. Is this a framework that you use with clients in business that you have found helpful?
It is something that I first and foremost use with people in my relationship coaching, but it does transfer into business, because often we think someone is needy and needs a lot of attention, while all they need is a little more hand-holding in the beginning, because there's something that's called the dependency paradox. So especially in relationship, you find someone who is quote unquote needy, and the more autonomous person who feels suffocated by the other person's need for hand-holding. And what happens is, the dependency paradox says the more someone can effectively depend on another person, the more autonomous that person becomes. Because he knows there's a safe harbor that I can always go to, and I don't need to be afraid that I make any mistakes. So giving a little bit more hand-holding in the beginning, especially to the more needy people that need a little bit more guidance in the beginning, can really pay off and turn them into more secure individuals. And that's again where the contempt becomes difficult, because that leader might be contemptuous towards that quote unquote needy employee. But if they gave a little bit more in the beginning, that would have a great payout. And I see that in my coaching, people need a little bit more hand-holding in the beginning, and then after a couple of months, they might join only every second call, right? Especially in group coaching situations, where they need less and less hand-holding because they really get a handle on it and become more self-confident.
Well, it really speaks to the happier the workplace, probably the more productive for sure, and profitable as well. I know that there's a correlation between employee engagement and profitability. I've seen it. I've seen the data on earnings per share, and I actually have a video on my website that covers this. And but it never really occurred to me to think that the happy workplace is a more profitable workplace, and everyone wants profit, so you can sell that. So everyone wants happiness too, but you have people have no idea how to get to it or buy it, or and it's a lot of it's a learned behavior. I think it's teachable behavior.
What comes to mind as you use the word happiness is a big misunderstanding that I see out there. And the big misunderstanding is that, especially a lot of gurus say, your happiness and the happiness of another person are separate entities. People need to become happy in and of themselves, and then 2 happy people come together and become even more happy maybe. And that's very obvious in relationships, but also in business. We do make each other happy. It's not separate. The happiness of 2 people who interact is deeply intertwined. An example of that is when you send a text message to someone, that person reads the text message, they will feel something. And as they respond, you'll feel something too. If the response doesn't come into within your expected time frame, you will also feel something different. Right? And that is immediate and unconscious. It's not a choice of feelings. We don't choose our feelings. We can then work with those feelings. We can reframe what happened. We can get information out of it and respond to that. But that initial feeling that's created inside of us is given to us by the other person. And acknowledging that we do have an influence of on other people's happiness, and they have an influence on ours, and taking responsibility for that, not in the sense of responsibility being this 500-pound anvil that's weighing down on us, and now I'm responsible for the happiness of all the employees out there. No, but I have a responsibility to interact with the people that I'm in touch with, that can leave them with an impression of increase, with leaving them a little bit more happy than they were when I started conversing with them.
So important.
And that trickles down.
Yep, exactly. So Arno, do you have any courses or classes, or, how do people, like, what's an entry point for doing business or learning a little bit more about what you do? If people want it.
Good entry point is probably my website, imagine-evolution.com.
Mm-hmm.
On the website, there's a page, corporate training, where I lay out a couple of modules that I talk about. For example, the personality types are there. The 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace are there. Building rapport is another one, and other things that I like to use. So that's probably the best entryway. Then I have a masterclass on relationships. I have a live event that I run once a week, which is relationship focused, not business focused. But it's still a good way to get in touch with me, to ask myself questions, and to see how I work, how I interact with the people in the event.
Great. Arno, thanks for being on the show today. And so I'm just going to wrap up with saying I think that relationships is what business is all about. Like, you don't do business with corporations, you do business with people. And so obviously everyone knows this, but a lot of the relationship work in companies seems to be left to the salespeople who are market facing. And really, the work of a CEO, I think, is to build culture in a company, and is to manage that culture, and to grow it, and to make sure that they have a healthy team, leadership team, executive team, healthy relationships in the workplace. I know sometimes I jokingly say that sometimes it's like running a giant adult daycare center, and this is your job as a CEO. But like, relationships really do matter a lot. And you've shared some interesting insights into things that we don't generally talk about on this program. But like, if you're going to scale your business, then you need to work on your emotional intelligence. You need to understand your personality or behavioral style, what motivates you. You need to look at your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state. And you need to be teaching or sharing, or being humble and knowing that you need to learn as much as the people that are working alongside you, so that you can get them to enjoy the journey, and you're enjoying the journey of entrepreneurship, because the adventure really is a lot about a personal development path. And so, Arno, just thanks for sharing your thoughts. Any closing words that you want to share?
Yeah, in adding to what you said, a good leader is a good follower. So acknowledging the expertise of the people around you, and following them where they have it, where they show it, makes them better followers of your expertise as well. And I like to use the lion as an analogy. You see the male lion sitting there resting and sleeping, and then the female lions go to hunt, and then he gets the big delicious first bites anyway. And you're like, why do those lionesses do that? There are 10 of them. They could fend him off. Because when another lion starts to challenge the pride, then the male lion is in front of everybody and defends them, defends their kids, and takes the swipes and risks his life to keep them safe. And that is why they're granted the big chunks, the big delicious chunks of the hunt. And that's what leadership is all about. Showing up when it really counts, and keeping the environment safe and sound.
Great. Arno, thank you so much. Folks, hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share it with others, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for future episodes. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.